Hi, all. I'm Spencer Burgett. I'm a policy analyst here at Atlas Public Policy, and today we're going to be doing a onboarding walkthrough of the Atlas EV Hub. I think most of you are probably already members, but if you're not, I've dropped in the chat a link to register. I'm covering a lot today, so feel free to drop in the chat also any specific questions you want answered or features that you are hoping to see today, and we'll make sure to cover that. We're going to start out with a high-level kind of overview of EV Hub, and then jump into the site itself to really walk through, how to use the dashboards, how to find what you're looking for. For starters, who are we? We're Atlas Public Policy. We're a small policy tech firm based in DC. We work with industry, policymakers, and the nonprofit advocacy community on a range of issue areas, most notably on transportation electrification, which is obviously what we are covering today with the Atlas EV Hub. One of the main things that we do is we run Atlas EV Hub, which is what we're going to be seeing today, and that is really intended to be a one-stop shop for data, information, tools, and news related to transportation electrification. So again, today we're going to start out with a quick walkthrough of the concept and then get into the website itself, get really down to how to actually use all of the different tools available to you on the website. EV Hub is really all about bringing together all of the disaggregated sources of information related to transportation electrification across policies, utility filings, market data, as well as all the tools and resources that I'm sure many of you are publishing and working on, and really to bring those all into one centralized location to be the go-to source for anything, everything that you need to advance transportation electrification. Really break it up into three main areas. Number one, just access to information. Number two, data analytics, so bringing really cool data visualization software and techniques to a lot of these publicly available data sources that are publicly available, but it can often be really difficult or challenging to use with a non-technical background. And then finally, just sharing intelligence, really focused on building community around transportation electrification. Link here, again, we're free for public agencies and clean cities coordinators. There's a nominal license fee for industry, NGO, and educational users. You can see all that the registration page I dropped in the chat. Like I said, we are really more than just a database. We're a community of transportation electrification professionals. We are the largest community of transportation electrification professionals anywhere, just over 1,300 users. Again, pretty evenly split between private sector, industry, and private sector NGOs, and then government users. And like the EV industry, we've seen huge growth recently, continue to expand our community. We have a ton of different things on EV Hub between data, tools, and resources. We're not going to get to all of it today, but we encourage you all to check it out, explore on your own, and reach out if you have questions. If there are specific things you want to see, again, drop those in the chat and try to make sure to cover them on the call today. So without further ado, I do want to go ahead and just jump into our website itself. So I'm going to hop over into EV Hub. So this is our website. You can see we have kind of a rotating carousel on the front page highlighting some of our newer features. We're going to jump into a few of these today. All of our tools and resources you can find at these menus in the top, organized into three different categories of public policy, market data, and tools and resources. We feature kind of our latest developments on the front page carousel here. You can kind of click through those. And then down here, we highlight some of our other publications around digest, data stories, and new resources, as well as upcoming events. So this is really a very dynamic homepage that keeps you up to date on the latest happenings on EV Hub. Jump into a feature that we just launched focused on the NEVI formula program from the infrastructure law, which was has really captured the attention of the transportation electrification community recently. And so we wanted to build a tool for the community to stay on top of what each state is doing in terms of submitting plans, asking for feedback, and establishing stakeholder processes for their NEVI formula dollars. So this is, again, a kind of a one-stop shop, very basic dashboard to find which states have submitted plans. If you're interested in a specific state, all of our dashboards are built on Power BI, so we are able to filter just by clicking on those dashboards. So let's say I'm interested in what Colorado has done. I can go ahead and click on Colorado on the map, and now I've filtered the whole dashboard specifically for Colorado. You can see how much funding they've allocated, if they set up a website, if they have any open requests for comment, and if they put together a draft plan. Down here, we have links to the plan and the website as well as when that was published. If there are any requests, those would show up over here on the request tab. This is, again, totally focused on every program. I invite you all to come check this out and track this, as we're coming up on that plan deadline, to go ahead and use this to see, track that flow of dollars. Beyond NEVI, we have an in-depth state policy dashboard that we're going to jump into. This is where we track proposed legislation, enacted policies, including things like incentives, rebates, fees, et cetera, as well as public funding and requests across a host of different programs. So starting out on this home page here, we're tracking everything. This is really a snapshot of the latest developments, where we have all of the enacted or proposed legislation across a number of different policy categories. So if you want to see things like what states have recently, established utility incentives, you can go ahead and click here, again, using that active filtering, and we're now looking at all the recent utility incentives across the US. If we want to get into a little bit more depth, this is a multi-page dashboard, so we can jump back and forth between the pages using these little buttons that we call bookmarks. So I'm going to jump to the policy analysis page to get into a little more depth on understanding what policies exist across different states in the US. So as this loads up, as you can see, we have more than 40 different policy maps. And so you can use this page to view what policies exist in each state. And so, for example, if I'm interested in incentives for charging infrastructure, I can jump into this charging incentive map, and I'm now seeing a map of all the different states that offer incentives for charging infrastructure across the US. You can also filter using this little table to see specifically grants or rebates, or loan programs, bonds, et cetera. And then at the bottom, we have a table describing all of those different programs with a link to find out more about the specific programs, see the eligibility, see how much money is available, et cetera. Again, I encourage you to check out all these different maps. They range from incentives like the one we just saw to the ACT rule around the MDHD sales requirements, to what kind of annual fees are out there across different states. You can see I currently have a filter going. I encourage using this kind of reset view as a good way to just clear out any filters, anything you might have set up as you're kind of using the dashboard. This button will definitely be your friend, as well as the help button, which just brings up a pane of useful information. We talked about using bookmarks to navigate between pages. One other way to navigate is using this little menu in the top right of all of the dashboards that shows you all the different pages on the dashboard and lets you jump back and forth between them. So I'm now going to jump over to the proposed legislation page, where you can see active legislation across the US. You can see there's not too much on there right now, as a lot of these legislative sessions have wound down. But if we want to see a full history of legislation, we can go ahead and uncheck this button here, where we're now looking at all a whole host of over 200 bills related to EVs. Down here we have a full link to the bill itself, a little description, and then that bill number. So encourage you all to definitely use this, both to track current legislation, but also as a little look back on how we got where we are. Moving right along, because we have a lot to cover here. We are also tracking any type of public request related to transportation electrification. So that covers things like public comment periods. It covers RFPs, as well as RFIs and notices of intent around upcoming funding opportunities. We have, as you can see, a ton of different requests tracked across the US, broken down in a few different ways to make it nice and manageable. Again, you can filter using all of these. So if I just want to see open requests, I can click here, and we're now just looking at ones that are currently up for applying. Down here, we have a link for all of those. So one aspect of Power BI, we've talked a lot about active filtering. On Power BI, you can only have one active filter going at a time. So let's say I wanted to see open requests in California. If I click on California, it actually clears out that existing filter. So what we want to do if we're doing some more complicated filtering is to use the filter bar on the right-hand side that allows us to set multiple filters. So you can just click in the top right to pop this open, and you can see we can do a lot more in-depth filtering using that. So let's say I wanted to look at just open requests, and maybe I'm only interested in RFPs, only interested in actually going out and getting money where it's available, and then only interested in those in California, potentially. Can close that out, and we're now seeing a much smaller selection of requests, much more manageable, where you can see just the currently open ones in California. The interesting, innovative small e-fleets pilot. I'm interested in that. We have a link directly to where you can go learn more about that program, go apply, figure out what you can do with that. So that's our request page. We do also send out an email every Tuesday morning covering all of the requests that we're currently tracking. That's a great way to stay on top of upcoming advocacy or funding opportunities without having to check back on this dashboard all the time. So I highly recommend you make sure you're subscribed to that as you're signing up. Lastly, on the state policy dashboard, we also track the results of those RFPs. So we're tracking where funding is going. And this is a really cool dashboard that has, a ton of data to get into. One really interesting way to use this is getting down to the look at how specific funding programs, for example, have been used. So if we wanted to, again, use that filter bar, let's look at the VW settlement program to understand just how, where that money's gone, how much each state has spent, et cetera. I've just filtered the dashboard down to the Volkswagen settlement program. So we're now looking at funding awarded under that program. You can see the spread across the US, the total funding, as well as how many distinct funding awards there have been. Down here, you can see where that funding has gone between different technology types. And then here you can see that funding over time. If you scroll down even farther, we can see actual individual awards with a link to exactly where that award has been made. By default, this is showing just funding for electric vehicles. If we wanted to see, electric vehicles as a portion of other funding, we can use this button to move over to show all fuel. And you can see that about 55% of Volkswagen settlement funds awarded so far have gone towards EV, while 26% has gone towards diesel. If you want to see what that looks like in a specific state, we can now click on that state and see Texas's breakdown of VW settlement funding. Ton of other programs. VW settlement's a cool example. We will be adding all the funding coming out of the infrastructure law into this. This would be a great way to keep track of, for example, who's winning that clean school bus funding and what technologies are getting funded by the EPA in that program, as well as NEVI and all the other potential EV funding in that bill. That wraps up the state policy dashboard. That's kind of our principal policy dashboard. I do want to jump over to another key aspect of our policy tracking, which is our electric utility filing tracking. This is where we're tracking any time a investor-owned utility files for a EV rate or a transportation electrification plan. We are pouring through those often 100+ page filings to pull out exactly how much they're investing and what they're investing in. We're tracking it through the whole process. So you can see we have applications that have been denied, applications that have been filed, as well as those that have been approved. Have just over $3.5 billion of approved investment tracked. These are great summary visuals. One other cool feature is to use this utility summary feature to pop up every, a great table across every state of which utilities have filed for transportation electrification plans. And then we do have a link to the actual docket, to the initial filing, and then to the final decision for each of those filings. This is obviously a ton of information. You might want to take this to go, share it with your colleagues, turn it into some visuals. All of our visuals in Power BI on EV Hub have these 3 dots in the top right with an export data option, where you can bring that data out as into an Excel file to use however you might like. There are a few different options here. Data with current layout will pull out exactly what you're currently showing. Summarized data will carry over any kind of summaries, statistics, sums, etc. that might be in the data. And then underlying data will pull out the actual underlying workbook that feeds into that visual. In this case, they're all going to look pretty similar because it's just a table, but in some of these, exporting maps, etc., those different options will make a difference. So this front page of the utility filing dashboard gives a really good overview. If we jump over to the next page of the dashboard, you can see this is a more in-depth view where we actually have each element of each filing tracked. That means there might be a filing that has an EV rate and an EVSE incentive and some EVSE make-ready funds. And so that is all pulled out here along with a description of that element. This is again a great way to track what's going on, but the filter bar is again going to be really useful here in terms of breaking this down into more usable data for your needs. So for example, you can filter by, really useful here is filtering by the filing element type and the status. So let's say we just want to look at what utilities have been approved to own electric vehicle charging. I just filter the type down to EVSE ownership, and then I'm going to filter the status to just approved or approved with modification. That's also relevant. And so now we're really just looking at utilities that have been approved for EVSE ownership. All of our tables, you can also change how they're sorted. So if I want to see the most recent approvals, I can filter the date that direction. And you can see there's been a few different utilities approved in 2022 to own electric vehicle charging. There are a number of other pages here I'm not going to get into, but they cover things like some details on EV charging, some different market data, as well as filings that contain equity requirements or provisions, and then some information about how likely utilities are to get approved in different states. So that's the electric utility filings. That kind of rounds out the public policy side. There are a few other dashboards here that are a little less data, a little less significant that we're not going to get into today because I do want to jump over onto the market side. Most our kind of principal market data dashboard is going to be our automakers dashboard. That's where we have all of our sales data, as well as automaker commitments, so things like commitments to new models, which EVs are being sold, as well as where automakers are investing in EV manufacturing. So this is our national EV sales. We have national EV sales by month, by make and model. So you can see this is, the trend over time. This little purple line gives you EV market share. We just passed 6.4%, I believe, in May. You'll notice there's about a month and a half lag between when the month ends and when we get that sales data. So we'll expect the June data on about the 15th of August. One thing I want to show here is the drill up and down features. So a lot of these charts, any chart with kind of a hierarchical data structure will have these little buttons that help you drill up or down. So what that means is just drilling up to the quarter level, drill up again to the year. Using these buttons, we can then, again, drill back down here. We can also do that so that time is a very common hierarchy. Another hierarchy, for example, is the manufacturer. So let's say we wanted to drill down on the type of EV sold. Sorry, didn't mean to export that. We can go ahead and drill down here, and we're now looking at the same breakdown. So this is, the best-selling EV models to date from 2011. If I want to see that just for May, click on May here, and we're now looking at the best-selling EV models in May. So a lot of different things you can do here. You can also, instead of filtering by month, filter by manufacturer. So if I drill back up here, and let's say we want to see Tesla sales over time, we're now looking just at Tesla. General Motors might be more interesting. And obviously, tracking the Bolt issues, seeing them back on the rise in April and May. So let's go ahead and clear that out. On the sales side, again, if we want to jump to the deep dive on sales, we have more in-depth sales data. These are much more in-depth metrics around cumulative sales, year over year, moving averages, et cetera. Again, all of this is exportable if you want to build some graphs for that data. And then down here, we also have those sales for each state. So you can filter for a state by just clicking on it here. I want to see Oregon EV sales over time. We're now looking at specifically Oregon EV sales over time. And then down here, you can see, ICE sales as well, and that specific EV market share in Oregon. If you want to export those sales, all of these visuals and tables can be exported right there. One other cool thing we should check out on the automaker's dashboard is on our EV strategy page. If I jump there, and this is where we're tracking manufacturing commitments. So you can see we have just about 120,000 jobs and $86 billion in investment commitments tracked across EV manufacturers. You can view that breakdown by parent company. And then this map is really cool. So this is showing all of the different EV manufacturing, EV battery, EV charging manufacturing facilities across the US. If you want to find out more about one of them, you click on it. And now we're again looking at, okay, it's the Hyundai facility. You can see here some more details about that, and then a link to that investment announcement. Ton here. I'm going to jump over and kind of round this out by showing off our EV charging deployment dashboard. This is where we're tracking the current public charging network across the US. So you can see we have, if this takes a second to load, just over 25,000 ports and 110,000 level 2 ports tracked across the US. This map is, as the charging network developed, this map has gotten a little overwhelming. So again, recommend using this filter bar to filter down. You can filter by, for example, EV network. EV network down here on this page. If we want to look, for example, exclusively at, check out Tesla's network. We got some news recently that Tesla's looking at opening up theirs to other manufacturers. So maybe we're interested in what that might mean. You can check out their network, and then also interesting filters around location. So maybe we're just interested in their network on, I'm over on the West Coast, so we'll check out their network on I-5. And you can now see we're looking at just Tesla ports up and down I-5. You can see we have just over 2,000 DC ports on adjacent to I-5. This is a really cool dashboard in terms of understanding the current charging network and what that looks like in each state, and then also tracking that change over time. We just have a couple minutes left here. Last couple things I would highlight are some of our more community-based resources. So things like our resource library. This is all under the Tools and Resources tab. This is just a library of reports, research tools. Have over 600 in there currently. We have a quarterly review where we publish a slide deck every quarter covering the biggest developments. We have state EV registrations in a few states. So across 16 states, we get registration data where we can actually show the exact number of EVs on the road by either county or zip code. And then we have a few different tools we've built that help fleets calculate total cost of ownership of an EV versus an ICE vehicle. And then over here is where we publish data stories. We publish our weekly digest. And then we also host a podcast called EV Hub Live that I highly recommend you all check out. I'm going to wrap it up there. Obviously didn't get to quite everything, but highly recommend you all reach out over email or using this chat box in the bottom right whenever you're using EV Hub to pull up a chat directly with the EV Hub team. More than happy to kind of help answer questions over email or over chat about any of the dashboards that we didn't cover today. Thank you all for coming. We're just about at time. Tom, is there anything in the chat that would be helpful to cover with our last minute?
No, just unless there's any other data on top of international data on top of the automaker pledges, if there's any other international data that you know of on EV Hub. That's the only one that comes to mind.
Gotcha. So one cool thing that we do track internationally that we didn't get into is this global private investment dashboard. So this is tracking all of the different high-level investments made around EVs and batteries and tracking where that's flowing. So you can see over $700 billion has been committed towards EV development. You can see what companies that's coming from. So this is, for example, Chinese companies investing in China or in the US. This is a cool way to kind of track where that investment is coming from and where that investment is going. But we are largely, other than that, and again, the automaker commitments, we're largely US focused on EV Hub. Okay, well, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. We will be posting a recording if you came late or want to refer to this. So stay tuned for that. And thank you all so much. Again, reach us at info@atlasevhub.com with any other questions you might have. Thank you.